Every man looks at a woman's body, but only 1 in 1,000 truly sees it. You might look at her chest and notice only its size, yet fail to sense the hidden message beneath her silent longing for affection or her quiet urge for independence. You may gaze upon her lips, admiring their outline, but overlook the truth they whisper about her bond with pleasure and intimacy. And when your eyes drift toward her hips, you might see only their shape, not the inner archetype of the nurturer or the huntress that speaks through them. While most men remain on the surface, the insightful man reads her body like a living manuscript, because her body, unlike her words, cannot deceive. Today, together, we will decode that language. We will uncover 7 subtle signals within her physique that expose her true essence, temperament, and unspoken desires. And yes, we will reach the most vital point, the deepest and most honest sign her body transmits, the one so many men misinterpret disastrously. In this journey, we will finally uncover what it truly means when she is tight down there. Believe me, the answer is not about anatomy, nor is it about her past. It's about you, and about how she feels beside you right now. This understanding becomes your ultimate lie detector, and I'll reveal it only to those willing to stay with me until the end. Before we dive in, I have one small favor to ask. If this topic sparks your curiosity, tap the like button, and if you're new here and not afraid to go deeper, subscribe to SYC Soul, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone who needs it. Now tell me, where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know how far this message travels. Let's begin with the first key. Her hips, the ancient signal of instinct and attraction. This is where a man's gaze naturally settles, often without his awareness. Her hips aren't merely a physical feature. They're an echo of evolution's oldest language, a code written in our subconscious over millennia. Long before Carl Jung gave form to his archetypal theory, nature had already shaped 2 feminine images that men instinctively interpret through the outline of her hips: the nurturer and the huntress. A woman with fuller, softer hips embodies the nurturer archetype. On a subconscious level, a man perceives in her the essence of fertility, stability, and comfort, a message whispering, "Here is safety, here is legacy, here is home." The deeper meaning of this attraction lies not in physical desire, but in the ancient call of the soul. When Jung spoke about such experiences, he often reminded us that what seems sensual on the surface is, in reality, symbolic of something spiritual. The woman's body becomes a living image of the unconscious, mysterious, fertile, and creative. She embodies that power which man instinctively seeks, but rarely understands. His fascination is an echo of the forgotten truth that his spirit is incomplete without union with the feminine within himself. This is why certain features captivate more than others: the curve of the hip, the rhythm of movement, the grace of gesture, for they symbolize the eternal mother, the origin of life. These forms awaken in man the memory of being connected, of once belonging to something greater than his isolated self. The unconscious speaks through such symbols, not with logic, but through feeling, drawing man closer to self-realization. Jung taught that the man who denies this inner feminine becomes divided, rational but spiritually barren, powerful but emotionally hollow. Yet when he acknowledges it, when he truly perceives the woman not only as other, but as mirror, transformation begins. He becomes more complete, more human. The act of seeing, in its truest form, becomes an act of inner awakening. To see is to participate in creation, to recognize the hidden unity beneath the dualities of male and female, spirit and matter. Every encounter with the feminine image is a chance to rediscover balance. This is why such attraction carries both danger and promise, for it can lead either to obsession or enlightenment, depending on whether man seeks possession or understanding. So when Jung analyzed dreams and visions, he often found that the woman appearing there was not just a person, but a symbol, a voice of the unconscious calling for integration. To ignore her was to remain fragmented. To understand her was to become whole. If you're connecting with these insights, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and share what part of Jung's wisdom speaks most deeply to you. I truly appreciate your engagement. It helps keep this exploration alive. In Jung's view, the woman that appears in a man's inner world is not an illusion to be dismissed, but a messenger from the depths of the unconscious. She represents the creative principle, the connection to feeling, to life, and to the mysteries that cannot be explained through reason alone. When this figure is ignored, she turns dark and destructive. When she is acknowledged, she becomes a source of guidance and renewal. Thus, man's psychological growth depends on how he relates to this inner feminine image, his anima. Many men, Jung noted, are unconsciously ruled by the anima without realizing it. They project her upon real women and then experience confusion, fascination, or disappointment when those women cannot live up to the divine image they unknowingly created. The failure of the outer relationship often comes not from the woman herself, but from the man's blindness to the symbolic nature of what he sees. What he truly seeks is not a person to possess, but the living connection to his own soul. Jung described countless dreams and fantasies in which the anima appears as a guide, sometimes as a young girl, sometimes as a mysterious seductress, and at times as a wise mother. Each form reveals a stage in the man's psychological development. The immature man is overwhelmed by the enchantress. The emotional man adores the motherly figure, and the wise man finally learns to recognize her as his own inner companion, no longer separate from himself. Through this process, man becomes whole. He learns that the feminine is not outside him, but within him, as the balancing power that gives his intellect depth, warmth, and compassion. The woman of dreams is therefore not a fantasy, but a teacher. She is the voice of life itself, whispering that logic without feeling is emptiness. Carl Jung insisted that true individuation, the journey toward the self, cannot happen unless this relationship with the anima is understood. To deny her is to deny one's own soul. When man begins to recognize his anima as a living reality within himself, something remarkable occurs, a shift from projection to participation. He no longer chases outer forms in hope of completion, but instead listens to the quiet voice that arises from his inner depths. Jung explained that this voice may first appear in dreams, symbols, or sudden moods, often carrying both light and shadow. The anima does not speak in logic, but through feeling, intuition, and imagination. She leads man into unfamiliar territories of the psyche, toward the realm of mystery where meaning begins to unfold. Yet this journey is not without peril. The man who follows the anima without awareness risks being swallowed by the unconscious. Jung warned that fascination can turn into possession, that the same power which inspires can also destroy if not understood. Just as the mythic hero must face the temptress on his way to wisdom, so too must the modern man learn to distinguish between spiritual truth and seductive illusion. The anima demands respect, not submission. As the relationship matures, the man discovers that she is not merely a symbol of romance or beauty, but the bridge to his deeper self. Through her, he encounters compassion, creativity, and emotional truth. The mind that was once rigid becomes fluid. Thought begins to carry warmth and life. He becomes more human, capable of love that does not possess, but understands. This integration transforms not only his personal relationships, but also his perception of the world. The outer woman ceases to be an object of projection and becomes a person, independent, complete in her own right. The man who has met his anima can finally love without illusion, because he no longer seeks his soul in another's body. Jung believed that only through this reconciliation could genuine balance between the masculine and feminine be achieved, not through dominance, but through harmony. This is the task of inner wholeness, the foundation of true individuality. Carl Jung often said that what we call fate is, in truth, the unfolding of what we have not yet made conscious. When a man refuses to see the anima within him, her energy manifests outwardly as repeated patterns, the same emotional wounds, the same unexplainable attractions and disappointments. Life begins to arrange itself like a mirror, reflecting back what he has neglected to understand. Jung saw this as the psyche's way of demanding attention, of calling him toward wholeness through the very experiences that trouble him most. In therapy, Jung noticed that the moment a man began to face the images of his inner woman, to feel her presence rather than project it, something began to heal. His dreams shifted, his relationships softened, his creativity came alive. It was not that he became less masculine, but that his masculinity gained depth and tenderness. This was not weakness, but balance, the awakening of the human totality that had been asleep beneath the surface of reason. Jung described this transformation as a sacred encounter, the meeting between the ego and the soul. The anima becomes a guide, leading him down into the symbolic world where logic fades and meaning emerges. She teaches through paradox. What the mind resists, the heart must embrace. It is in this descent that the true work of individuation begins. But many resist this path. They fear the irrational, the emotional, the mysterious. Jung understood this fear. He called it the fear of the unconscious, the fear of meeting one's own truth. And yet, those who dare to descend discover that the darkness is not empty. It is fertile. It contains everything that the conscious mind has rejected, but the soul still remembers. Through patience and self-reflection, the man learns to live with both his intellect and his feeling side, no longer at war with himself. He begins to sense that every external experience is connected to an inner reality. What once appeared as chaos now reveals an underlying order, a hidden intelligence guiding him toward self-realization. If these insights resonate with you, let me know where you're watching this from. I'd love to hear your connection to Jung's ideas. And if you appreciate this work, your comment keeps this journey alive. As Jung explored further, he observed that the anima is not only a personal figure, but also a bridge to the collective unconscious, the deep, universal layer of the psyche shared by all humankind. Through her, man touches the archetypal world, where ancient symbols, myths, and instincts reside. It is here that dreams reveal patterns older than any individual life. The anima often speaks in the language of myth, appearing as a goddess, a muse, or a spirit, showing man that his personal story is part of something far greater than himself. Jung saw this connection as sacred. When the anima awakens, life begins to move with an unseen rhythm. Events, coincidences, and inner images align in mysterious harmony, what Jung called synchronicity. It feels as though the universe itself begins to respond to the individual's inner transformation. What was once random becomes meaningful, and the man realizes that the world outside is mysteriously linked to the world within. But this expansion also carries a test. Contact with the unconscious can inflate the ego, making one feel chosen or superior. Jung warned that spiritual experiences, if not grounded in humility and awareness, can turn into delusion. The anima, as a guide, does not seek worship but understanding. Her purpose is not to make man divine, but to make him whole, to help him stand firmly between heaven and earth, with awareness of both light and shadow. Those who integrate this wisdom find their creativity deepening. Art, poetry, music, and even science become expressions of the psyche's hidden dialogue. Jung believed that many great works in history were born from this inner encounter, the merging of conscious effort and unconscious inspiration. The artist, in this sense, becomes a vessel through which the collective soul speaks. In daily life, this integration brings quiet strength. The man becomes less reactive, more intuitive, and more attuned to the subtle movements of his inner world. He begins to live not as a fragmented mind, but as a complete being, aware that meaning flows through every experience, no matter how ordinary it may seem. Carl Jung often reminded his students that every encounter with the unconscious is both dangerous and transformative. To meet the anima is to awaken forces that can no longer be controlled by reason alone. The man who steps into that world must learn patience, honesty, and inner discipline, for the unconscious rewards sincerity and punishes arrogance. Jung compared this process to the ancient rites of initiation, the symbolic death of the old self, so that a more complete being might emerge. At first, the descent can feel like confusion or despair. Old certainties collapse, relationships shift, and emotions surface with unexpected intensity. The ego resists, insisting that it knows best, but the anima continues to draw him inward. Jung explained that this tension is necessary. The psyche evolves through the struggle between what we think we are and what we are meant to become. Only by enduring this inner conflict does one begin to sense the deeper pattern guiding it. In dreams and visions, the anima may appear as a light in darkness, sometimes comforting, sometimes terrifying. She shows man what he has ignored, his vulnerability, his longing, his need for love and meaning. To face these truths is painful, yet it is the very path toward freedom. Jung said that no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. To know oneself, one must also know one's shadow, that part of the soul we hide from the world. Through acceptance of this darkness, compassion begins to grow. The man sees not only his own flaws, but those of others with new understanding. The heart softens, judgment fades. He realizes that to be human is to live between opposites, light and dark, joy and sorrow, reason and passion. The goal is not to eliminate one side, but to hold them both in balance. In this harmony, a quiet wisdom emerges. Life no longer feels random or divided. The man who once sought external approval now follows an inner compass, guided by the subtle voice of his own soul. As the journey deepens, Jung said, the individual begins to realize that the anima is not the final destination, but a bridge, a living symbol pointing toward something even greater, the self. This self, in Jung's understanding, is the center and totality of the psyche, the union of conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. When the man's relationship with the anima becomes stable, she leads him toward this wholeness, where all opposites begin to find their rightful place. At this stage, the man experiences an inner peace unknown before. He no longer seeks perfection in the outer world, because he has glimpsed its reflection within himself. Jung described this as the moment when life acquires depth, when the individual stops being a fragment chasing fulfillment and becomes a vessel through which life itself flows. Every act, every meeting, every challenge starts to feel meaningful, as though guided by an unseen intelligence. But Jung warned that this realization must not turn into spiritual pride. The path toward the self demands humility, for even enlightenment has its shadows. The ego easily claims divine insight as its own achievement, forgetting that true wisdom always carries reverence. The man who genuinely reaches this stage does not boast of knowledge. He simply lives it, quietly, through authenticity and compassion. The anima, once mysterious and alluring, now transforms into an inner guide of calm understanding. Her voice softens, becoming less dramatic, more integrated, no longer a separate figure, but part of the man's inner harmony. His creative powers flourish naturally, not as escape, but as expression of wholeness. Jung believed that when a person attains this balance, their presence itself becomes healing to others. They carry within them the image of unity, a living symbol of the reconciled soul. Such a life is no longer driven by fear or desire, but by purpose. The man learns to trust the process of existence, knowing that every step, even the painful ones, has meaning. The unconscious is no longer an enemy, but a companion, a silent teacher that walks beside him. As Jung often emphasized, the process of individuation does not end in a moment of enlightenment, but continues throughout life. To become whole is not to become perfect. It is to live in conscious relationship with one's inner world. The anima may have led the man to the self, yet her guidance never fully disappears. She remains as a subtle presence, reminding him to stay in touch with feeling, imagination, and the quiet wisdom that lies beneath the surface of thought. Jung described this ongoing dialogue between consciousness and the unconscious as the essence of psychological growth. Life presents new challenges, and with each challenge, the relationship to the inner world must be renewed. The man who once feared his emotions now sees them as messages. The dreams he once ignored now offer direction. Even pain becomes meaningful when understood symbolically, not as punishment, but as transformation. He begins to recognize the same patterns in others. The conflicts, projections, and struggles he once judged are now understood as reflections of the universal human journey. Jung believed that this realization awakens compassion. When one truly sees the shared nature of the unconscious, arrogance fades and empathy deepens. The world that once seemed divided between me and them begins to feel connected by invisible threads of shared experience. In this awareness, love itself changes form. It is no longer the grasping desire of the incomplete, but the generous love of one who has found his center. The man becomes capable of relationship without possession, of intimacy without fear. This is the gift of the anima. She teaches that love begins within, and still the work continues. The unconscious never stops revealing new aspects of the self. Jung said that life's second half, if lived consciously, becomes a return, not backward, but inward. It is the time when outer ambitions fade and the search for meaning turns toward the soul. In the later stages of Jung's understanding, individuation becomes less a goal and more a way of living. The man who has met his anima and glimpsed the self no longer seeks answers through analysis alone. He begins to live symbolically. Every event, every dream, every person carries a deeper meaning, as if life itself were speaking through them. Jung believed that this is when consciousness finally aligns with the flow of the unconscious, forming a quiet partnership between what is known and what is mysterious. This harmony brings a sense of inner authority, not pride, but confidence rooted in truth. The man no longer looks outward for validation. He listens instead to his inner voice, shaped by years of reflection and struggle. Jung called this state the realization of the self, the moment when the conscious ego stands in dialogue with the infinite psyche, aware that both are part of the same whole. In this awareness, the man finds that opposites no longer feel like enemies. Light and shadow, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, all become part of the same eternal rhythm. He sees that what once appeared as contradiction is actually balance, and what once felt like chaos is hidden order. This realization brings humility, for he knows he is both small and infinite, both temporary and eternal. Through this understanding, creativity flows freely. Art, thought, and compassion emerge naturally, not from desire for recognition, but from the soul's need to express itself. Jung often said that a person who lives from the self becomes like a tree, deeply rooted in the earth, yet reaching toward the heavens. Such a life is not perfect, but whole, not free from pain, but filled with meaning. And so, the man lives quietly, aware that his journey is both unique and universal. He walks through the world with calm eyes, guided by the same unseen wisdom that once called him into the depths. As Jung's work reached its maturity, he often spoke of the soul not as an idea, but as a living reality. He believed that within every person there exists a hidden spark of divinity, not something external to be worshipped, but an inner light to be discovered. Through the long and often painful journey of individuation, that light grows clearer, guiding the person toward authenticity. The man who once sought his worth in the world outside finally realizes that everything he searched for has always existed within. Jung described this awareness as the reunion of opposites, the sacred marriage of the conscious and the unconscious. When the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine, are reconciled, a new kind of consciousness emerges, one that no longer separates spirit from matter, or love from knowledge. This integration marks the birth of what Jung called the self, the totality of being. It is not an end, but a beginning, a continuous unfolding of the soul's potential. At this stage, life itself becomes the teacher. Every meeting, every loss, every joy is understood as part of the psyche's great design. The man who once resisted fate now cooperates with it, seeing each moment as necessary. He is no longer merely living. He is participating in the ongoing creation of meaning. Jung said that to live from this center is to serve something greater than the ego, to embody consciousness for the world. Such a person carries peace wherever he goes. His presence inspires without words because it reflects harmony with the self. He knows that darkness will return, that struggles will continue, but he faces them with acceptance, for he has learned that even the shadow serves the light. And perhaps that is Jung's most profound message, that wholeness, not perfection, is the goal of human life. To become what we are, to live truthfully and consciously, is the greatest act of creation. If these reflections touched something within you, don't forget to subscribe to SYC Soul, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you never miss future explorations into the depths of the human psyche. Share this journey with someone who seeks to understand themselves, for awareness shared is awareness multiplied.